In studio on this fine St. Patrick's Day morning is my friend from the Institute for Reforming Government, CJ Szafir. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Also, no green on you either.
It's my daughter's birthday. She turns 5.
Shout out.
Vanessa, happy birthday.
Happy birthday
I
to
focus
you.
on that.
That is cool. That's always a big one. 5 years old.
It's when they start caring about birthday parties.
Right.
And it's always a little more stressful once they turn 5.
So that's a lot of fun. So happy birthday, Vanessa. All right, we're going to talk about education this hour because we got Brittany Kinzer, who's the candidate for Department of Public Instruction Superintendent. That's at 9:35. But you're going to sort of tee up this conversation. Let's start. This is for the voters out there, all the people listening who are going, first off, here's the reality. A lot of people not really focused on this race. A lot of attention on the Supreme Court race, all the ad money going there, millions of dollars. This one's sort of getting some attention. I noticed an increase in ads this weekend. So let's baseline it for people. This job, Superintendent of Public Instruction, that department, what do they do? What do they do in Wisconsin that people can understand and identify with day to day?
The State Superintendent of Public Instruction is a constitutional officer in the Wisconsin Constitution, elected in the spring. It runs the Department of Public Instruction. So basically it runs the state education agency. We actually are we're one of the only states in the country that has this setup where we elect a head of the DPI.
Is that a good thing?
We'll see. We'll see in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But the issue is there's not a lot of checks and balances, right? There's no board. The governor doesn't really have any oversight. The State Superintendent of Public Instruction has a constitutional authority to oversee public instruction. So essentially, think of the DPI as like overseeing the education system in Wisconsin. Now, they can't write laws. That's the legislature and the governor. But what they can do is they interpret the laws. They're the agency that says, okay, legislature, governor, you pass laws with school choice, you pass laws with apprenticeships, you pass laws with teachers. We're now going to implement it how we see fit. And that's huge because, you can basically say the DPI has a wide range of latitude with interpreting things pertaining to teacher licensing, pertaining to things with standards, which we'll
Testing standards, yep.
Test scores, report cards. So it's a lot of power. And they also they oversee the K-12 system. So all issues and complaints really goes right to the DPI.
If you look at the head of agencies in Wisconsin, whatever agency you want to talk about, resources to the business development, all that stuff, how powerful is that superintendent position when you talk about real power impacting kids' education?
It's the most powerful agency position. It's one of the most powerful public official positions, period. They have constitutional authority that can't be taken away. They have a lot of ability to really set the vision for K-12.
Is it a one-person show, though? Can they literally make policy and just have their staff implement it?
What they have the ability to do is they can do rules. They can interpret state law. They also have some powers already on the books, right? They can withhold state aid if a school is underperforming. They have the ability under state law to really to interpret in a wide range of, hey, this is what we want the report card to look like. They can set standards, make it higher, make it lower, which we will discuss. And they can also be they have a massive bully pulpit, right? If they want to go and cast a vision for K-12 for the state of Wisconsin, they're a force to be reckoned with in the legislature and with the governor's office.
I know IRG, Institute for Reforming Government, has done polling on this. Let's take a quick break here because I want to spend some time on what your polling suggests voters actually care about when it comes to K-12. CJ Szafir, the head, the CEO, what's your title over there, president? Of the Institute for Reforming Government. Always a great guest. He's been on all the programs here on WTMJ. Quick break here. We'll follow up after that. CJ Szafir, president of the Institute for Reforming Government, in studio this Monday morning. Don't forget, candidate for superintendent of Department of Public Instruction, Brittany Kinzer, will join me at 9:35 on the phone. All right, I know you've done extensive polling on this. I looked through that polling this morning. Reviewing that, not to get too into the weeds, but what do voters seem to be saying about what's important K-12?
Yeah, IRG recently conducted a poll. I think next to Charles Franklin, one of the better polls in the state of Wisconsin. We do a very thorough job diving into not just the horse race, but the why. So, we asked, who do people prefer, Brittany Kinzer or Jill Underly? Brittany, had a 2-point lead within the margin of error. Vast majority were undecided, which is not surprising. But there's a couple things that are really fascinating. First off, people are not satisfied with the direction of the K-12 schools. So last segment, we talked about, the bully pulpit, the head of the DPI, they cast a vision for education. Well, 50% of voters say that K-12 education in Wisconsin is going in the wrong direction. Only 25% said it's going in the right direction. That, I think, is why Jill Underly actually had a liberal union primary challenger just a couple months ago. Because I think bipartisan disagreement with where our K-12 schools are going. And primarily that's because they see a few things. One is they see a lot of money going into schools and not a lot of results in return. 54% said no more increase in taxes to go to schools. Not to say that they don't want money spent on schools, because obviously schools cost money.
They want it spent properly.
But they want it spent properly. They're a little fed up with the results, with where we're going, how we can produce students that are ready for the workforce or for college. In Milwaukee, we asked statewide voters, like, what do you want to do with Milwaukee public schools? It's been in the news for the last 12 months. And almost 50%, so 46% want MPS dissolved. And that's talking about voters across the state. That's not something that the DPI will be able to do unilaterally. However, it's a sign to me that voters are, again, just really unhappy with the direction of schools. And it's why school choice is polls so popular in this poll. So when voters, as I said, Brittany was up 22% to 20% over Jill Underly. But we did some message testing when we told voters that Brittany was in favor of school choice. That her support went from 22% to 56%. A majority of people, bipartisan, supported her over Jill Underly.
I get this question a lot whenever we talk about choice and MPS and education generally. Is the goal of choice advocates to eliminate public school?
Well, the goal of IRG is to ensure that every single child has access to a high-quality education. So every child in the state of Wisconsin should be able to go to a high-quality school. And that's going to look different in different types of regions. That's, in Milwaukee, that's going to be, we have to ensure that there is really strong sectors, MPS, private voucher, public charter. Out in rural Wisconsin, we got to do dramatically more to improve our rural schools where there's just not a ton of options. So that's kind of where I see everything going when people say that they're in favor of school choice. Obviously, I can't speak for every school choice proponent in the state of Wisconsin.
This seems like an obvious question. Given the power of this position, I guess it makes sense. Does it matter who controls the Department of Public Instruction in the state of Wisconsin, given the rules that we have right now, given the laws that we have of the land and how education is set up?
So 67% of voters, we asked, what do you want the DPI to actually do? 67% of voters say they want a DPI to increase academic quality and increase standards. That, to me, is the massive backlash from the story in the last six months of Jill Underly watering down the test scores, watering down the standards to make it seem like more people can read, more people can do math when they really can't.
This is an opinion question, so you can not answer it or answer it. Why do you think Jill Underly, Department of Public Instruction, watered down those testing standards? What do they win by that?
So Jill Underly, to understand her is to understand the DPI. The DPI has been long captured by the teachers' unions, always. As far as anyone can really remember, we have not really had an ed reformer, an outside change agent, someone to shake up the status quo. It's captured by the unions, so they kind of really are just they really focus on the progressive mindset. And I think, in my opinion, the emails that we obtained, the emails that Quinton Claybon in our office obtained, the stories that we broke shows that the DPI was really concerned and they really wanted people to look better than they were actually doing. I think a part of that is they wanted to buck the trend nationally and to show that, yes, Wisconsin kids are reading. We are doing actually better. And that's a philosophy. Now, when you look across the state, you have, Governor Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. He's increasing standards. He's actually saying, hey, the status quo is not acceptable. Let's increase the standards. Let's increase the cutoff scores so we can really push students to be doing as well as they possibly can. Wisconsin, we do everything backwards, and that's really what we saw in the DPI in the last 12 months.
You teed up the conversation about Milwaukee Public Schools, and there's a lot of things we could talk about. SROs, there's some news today, apparently, that this is the deadline, and we'll see what happens with that. The Judge Borowski has been very clear that he's running out of patience, and I credit him for taking that stance. Whether it's a bad audit, and we find out that there's a lot of financial problems, leadership, I should say lack thereof, school board, strong influence of the teachers union. You mentioned the term dissolve before. Voters across the state said, maybe we should dissolve it. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but what is, in your mind, and you study this, and one of your great staff, Quentin Claiborne, is probably digs deeper than maybe anybody else in the state on what's going on in MPS. What's the solution here? Because I am tired of hearing these stories that we can't teach our kids. And I got in trouble. I told you the story during the break for saying, maybe we are doing it wrong. In struggling school districts, we strip out all the cool stuff and we focus on the basics. And I know that's not great for some parents to hear, but we need these kids to graduate. And if we're not doing that, we're not getting, it doesn't matter what other classes they take. I know that's an extreme position. I'll defend it if you want me to. What is the answer for MPS in your mind?
So when you look at real standards across the country, the NAEP test scores that looks at similarly situated students in all the different cities, Milwaukee performs way behind Detroit, Houston, Miami, Chicago. Black students in Milwaukee at MPS in reading, they are outperformed by students in those cities who are black. Some of those students, special education students in those cities, outperform black students in Milwaukee. I mean, we have a reading and writing crisis in Milwaukee. So the real solutions are going to come from the classroom. How do we get better teachers? How do we get more energetic teachers into the classrooms, every single classroom? How do we get better leadership? We have a new superintendent at MPS.
Started this Saturday.
Just started. Pray for her success. But at the end of the day, look, we're electing MPS board members are up for re-election in a couple of weeks. There's hardly any opponents. I mean, most of these people are running unopposed, which is almost mind-blowing given that the real trauma that's happening in the district. You have enrollment is going down. So, you kind of really get concerned for the future, not to mention right now that they can't really pass a financial audit. So back up, the state superintendent of public instruction has a lot of authority to not just withhold aid, but they can also go in and intervene on really low performing schools, which could very well mean going into Milwaukee public schools. Right now, Jill Underly hasn't done that. She really hasn't shown the real need or the real concern to really go into Milwaukee and say, hey, right now we have the lowest performing school district in the entire country. And that's a crisis that really requires leadership and intervention.
CJ Szafir, Institute for Reforming Government. Let's talk about it. He mentioned Jill Underly, and we're going to be talking to Brittany Kinzer at 9:35. State of the race. What CJ thinks might happen. That's all coming up next on 620 WTMJ. From the Institute for Reforming Government, let's go. State of the race. Underly, Kinzer. How do you see it?
I mentioned before, status quo favors Underly, right? So Underly, it's a position that's always been held by the teachers union picked person, Tony Evers, now Jill Underly. She probably thinks she's winning, right? That's why she's not doing debates. She's really.
And to be fair, we have asked her campaign to have her come on the show.
She should come on. She's not doing interviews. She's really not doing a whole lot.
No.
Which I think is really sad because of the numbers we mentioned before. Look, the reality is we went through the poll and people are not happy. The majority is not happy with the direction of the school system. They want major reforms. Their majority is in favor of school choice, really going in and intervening into MPS and really trying to fix it. They want money that follows the student. I mean, we are becoming a ed reform electorate, which I think is very concerning for Underly and really there is a pathway for Brittany to win because I think the voters agree with her. Now, who's going to turn out in this weird
That's the big question.
spring race? It's going to be high turnout because of the state Supreme Court. But are they going to keep on voting for the state superintendent of public instruction? I don't know. They should, because it's an awfully important race, and K-12 is awfully important in the state of Wisconsin.
Real quick, like 10 seconds, do you think, given the state of federal government where they're revolutionizing everything they do, will we see something like that in education in Wisconsin if Kinzer wins?
She's certainly talking about it. I think there's a really good opportunity. I mean, look, she's running as a change agent, and we just haven't had that in Wisconsin yet. So she's a unique candidate, but I think these are really interesting times in Wisconsin politics.
I think they call that opportunity for Brittany Kinzer, who will be my guest on this program in about 5 minutes or so. CJ Szafir, always appreciate you.
Thank you.
Local news.